Silence is often mistaken for emptiness, a void where nothing happens. Yet, true silence is not absence. It is a potent force that unsettles, commands, and transforms. In a world buzzing with noise, chatter, and relentless clamoring for attention, silence stands apart like a shadowed monolith. It doesn't beg for recognition or demand applause. Instead, it exerts an undeniable power that both intrigues and intimidates those around it. The noisy world often fears silence because it reveals what words attempt to conceal. Amid this cacophony, the silent observer becomes a figure of quiet authority. Without uttering a word, their presence alone compels respect and curiosity. They are not powerless. They wield a different kind of strength, one rooted in restraint, depth, and self-control. It is this paradox that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explored deeply. To Nietzsche, silence was more than the absence of sound. It was a symbol of profound power and self-mastery. He suggested that those who understand and embrace silence possess an inner strength far beyond the loudest voices. Join me as we journey into the nature of silence, why it terrifies us, how it shapes our perceptions of power, and how embracing silence can lead to a transformative shift within ourselves. By the end, you'll see silence not as a void, but as a gateway to true strength. The noise-addicted world versus the silent power. Modern society is drenched in noise, an unrelenting barrage of voices clamoring for attention. Social media platforms echo with endless streams of opinions, outrage, and self-promotion. The louder and more frequent the message, the more it seems to matter. In this world, noise has become a currency of influence. People post impulsively, shout to be heard, and engage in performative outrage, mistaking volume for value. The constant hum of notifications and hot takes creates a frenzy where being loud is seen as a sign of strength. But loudness is often a mask, not true power. It's easy to mistake bluster and bombast for confidence and control. Nietzsche warned us otherwise. Genuine strength is quiet and inward, a deep, unshakable force that doesn't need to prove itself with noise. True power is like a still lake beneath a stormy sky, calm, profound, and unseen until disturbed. It doesn't compete in the arena of voices because it commands attention naturally without forcing it. Consider the difference between the person who dominates conversations, interrupting and overpowering others with sheer volume, and the one who listens carefully, weighing every word before speaking. The former may seem powerful, but their influence often fades quickly. The latter, patient, observant, and deliberate, holds an invisible authority that demands respect. Their silence builds suspense. It unsettles because it cannot be controlled or anticipated. Silence is not weakness. It is flight, not from fear, but from the need to be understood on superficial terms. It terrifies those addicted to noise because it resists capture and manipulation. In a world addicted to noise, silence is the ultimate power move, mysterious, commanding, and profoundly disruptive. Why people fear silence? Silence is often perceived not as a peaceful reprieve, but as a daunting confrontation with oneself. Psychologically, this fear stems from silence's power to expose the deepest insecurities, pretense, and an innate craving for external validation. When the noise around us fades, we are left alone with our thoughts, often uncomfortable, unfiltered, and raw. This is why many people avoid silence. It acts like a mirror, reflecting back parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. In silence, there are no distractions, no chatter, no distractions, no social cues to hide behind. For instance, Elite interrogators use silence deliberately, understanding its power. When a suspect is left in silence, they begin to fill the void with confessions or truths they might otherwise withhold. Powerful leaders, such as Vladimir Putin, also harness silence strategically. Putin's famously calm, silent demeanor in tense moments conveys control and forces others into discomfort, revealing their weaknesses. Similarly, fictional characters like Don Draper from Mad Men use silence to command attention, compelling those around them to confront their own discomfort or reveal hidden truths. In stark contrast, many people today drown themselves in noise, endless scrolling on social media, reactive online debates, and constant chatter. These noisy, reactive figures avoid silence at all costs, fearing it might force them to acknowledge their doubts, fears, or lack of self-assurance. Social media debaters, for example, often use loud, rapid-fire arguments, not just to win, but to avoid moments of pause where they might have to reflect honestly. Ultimately, silence is a mirror most people avoid looking into because it reflects the vulnerability and uncertainty they'd rather keep hidden. But by embracing silence, individuals can confront their true selves, develop resilience, and find authentic confidence beyond the need for external validation. Nietzsche's silent archetype and the Übermensch. In Nietzsche's philosophy, the silent archetype represents a figure who transcends the need for social validation and rejects the herd mentality that dominates conventional society. This archetype embodies a deep self-mastery and independence from external approval, choosing instead to cultivate inner strength and authenticity. Unlike those who seek affirmation through conformity or loud assertion, the silent archetype remains reserved, observing rather than participating in the superficial social game. Central to Nietzsche's thought is the concept of the Übermensch, often mistranslated as Superman or Overman. Contrary to popular misconceptions of the Übermensch as a boisterous conqueror or domineering figure, Nietzsche's Übermensch is fundamentally a self-mastered, grounded being. This individual has overcome internal contradictions and herd-imposed values, creating a personal ethos that affirms life with courage and creativity. The Übermensch does not shout to assert power, but embodies strength quietly, through profound self-overcoming and autonomous self-expression. The silent archetype's refusal to engage in the social game, the endless quest for recognition, status, or approval, makes him both terrifying and misunderstood by the masses. Society, which thrives on visibility and loudness, often perceives silence as a threat or a sign of aloof superiority. The silent individual disrupts collective norms by his mere presence and nonconformity, challenging others to question their own dependence on external validation. This can evoke fear, envy, or hostility from those entrenched in herd mentality. Yet, there is a profound paradox in Nietzsche's silent archetype. Though he speaks less, he communicates far more. His silence is not emptiness, but a powerful statement beyond words. In rejecting the superficial noise of society, he becomes a symbol, a beacon of deeper truth and possibility. The silent archetype, much like the Übermensch, transcends the crowd not through volume, but through the gravity of his presence and the example of his life. In this way, Nietzsche invites us to reconsider strength and greatness as quiet, internal phenomena that ripple outward, transforming both self and society. The will to power, mastery over self. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power is often misunderstood as merely a drive to dominate others. In reality, it primarily signifies mastery over oneself, the ability to govern one's impulses, desires, and thoughts with deliberate control. This self-mastery is a profound internal strength, a dynamic force that channels energy inward rather than outward aggression. Silence perfectly embodies this principle. When one chooses silence, it is not weakness or submission, but a conscious act of self-discipline. Silence channels chaotic impulses, preventing them from spilling out as uncontrolled noise or emotional reaction. It cultivates focus and conserves mental energy, transforming scattered thoughts into concentrated power. In this way, silence becomes a form of self-restraint, reflecting inner order and clarity. Contrasting silence with chaos reveals the essence of Nietzsche's will to power. Chaos and noise symbolize uncontrolled, reactive energy, the opposite of mastery. Noise distracts and dissipates strength, while silence consolidates it, fostering an environment for strategic thought and measured action. Moreover, silence functions as a strategic tool for dominance without aggression. It unsettles opponents, forcing them to confront their own uncertainty. Rather than overwhelming others through loud force or confrontation, the silent individual exerts influence by maintaining composure and control, projecting confidence and unshakable presence. In practice, silence is invaluable in negotiation, interrogation, and leadership. Negotiators often use pauses to prompt concessions, letting the other party fill the void with revealing information. Interrogators employ silence to pressure suspects into revealing truths. Great leaders harness silence to command attention, encouraging reflection and respect, rather than relying on constant directives or empty rhetoric. Thus, Nietzsche's will to power, expressed through silence, is mastery over self, a disciplined inward force that enables quiet dominance and purposeful action. Silence as strategic presence and power. Silence holds a unique and unsettling power because it denies others the control and predictability they often seek in communication. When people interact, they expect responses, words, expressions, or reactions that guide their behavior and help them anticipate outcomes. Silence breaks this pattern, creating a void where meaning should be. This absence of reaction unsettles others, leaving them unsure how to proceed or interpret the situation, thereby shifting the balance of power toward the silent individual. By refusing to fill the space with words or gestures, silence forces people out of their comfort zones. It compels them to confront their own thoughts and feelings without the usual social cues or reassurance. In these moments, facades drop, and true nature often emerges, whether it's impatience, insecurity, or genuine introspection. The silent presence acts like a mirror, reflecting back what others may prefer to hide or deny. Psychologically, people are disturbed by those who are unreadable and non-reactive because human beings are wired for social connection and understanding. We rely on cues to interpret intent and emotion, and when these cues are missing, our brains attempt to fill the gap, often with anxiety or suspicion. This discomfort stems from an innate need for predictability and control in social exchanges. In a world addicted to constant reaction and immediate responses, whether through conversations, social media, or digital communication, silence becomes a radical form of resistance. It disrupts the cycle of impulsive replies and emotional contagion, creating space for reflection, power, and autonomy. Rather than reacting mindlessly, silence allows intentional presence and strategic influence. Listeners are encouraged to embrace silence deliberately. By doing so, they harness its power to unsettle, reveal, and resist, turning silence from mere absence of sound into a potent tool of communication and control. The paradox of silence. Less is more. In a world that often equates volume with value, the paradox of silence reveals a profound truth. Speaking less can make one more powerful and mysterious. Silence creates a space where meaning is projected, where presence is amplified not by what is said, but by what is left unsaid. When a person chooses restraint over relentless noise, they invite curiosity, respect, and introspection from those around them. Society instinctively fills the void of silence with interpretation, often assigning depth, wisdom, or strength to those who speak sparingly. This amplification of presence through silence transforms quiet individuals into enigmatic figures whose power lies precisely in their reticence. Noise, on the other hand, can dilute this power. Constant talking or oversharing exposes vulnerabilities and weaknesses, eroding the aura of control and self-possession. Excessive noise signals anxiety, insecurity, or a desperate need for validation. In contrast, silence serves as a shield, a deliberate withdrawal that preserves dignity and authority. It demands others lean in, pay attention, and engage more thoughtfully. The cacophony of endless chatter often obscures true insight, while silence sharpens focus and intention. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche eloquently captured the potency of brevity and silence. His aphorisms, terse yet profound, embody the power of economy in language. For example, Nietzsche famously said, "It is not the answer that enlightens, but the question." This succinct statement invites deep reflection precisely because it leaves space for thought, rather than filling it with verbose explanation. Nietzsche's style teaches us that sometimes the fewest words carry the greatest weight. To harness this power, we must embrace stillness and intentionality. Silence is not mere absence of sound. It is a deliberate act of presence and self-mastery. By cultivating quiet, we reclaim our voice's power and invite the world to listen more attentively. In an era overwhelmed by noise, less truly becomes more, and silence becomes the ultimate expression of strength. Practical steps to embrace Nietzschean silent power. Embracing Nietzschean silent power is about cultivating a deep inner strength that doesn't seek constant external validation. Start by cultivating inner purpose. Reflect on what truly matters to you beyond societal expectations. Write down your core values and goals and revisit them regularly. This anchors your confidence in your own convictions rather than the approval of others. Next, practice restraint in speech and action. Resist the urge to immediately react or explain yourself. Instead, pause and assess the situation. This builds mental discipline and signals quiet authority. In social settings, work on holding silence by allowing pauses after others speak before responding. Use these moments to gather your thoughts. It conveys confidence and encourages deeper dialogue. Developing confidence without constant validation means shifting your focus inward. When you catch yourself seeking approval, remind yourself that your worth isn't determined by others. Celebrate small personal achievements and track progress privately. This nurtures an internal sense of accomplishment. To build presence, engage in self-awareness practices such as mindfulness or journaling. Notice your body language, tone, and habitual reactions. Adjust to communicate calm and composure. Discipline yourself to maintain eye contact and a steady voice, even when you feel uncertain. In essence, silent power arises from mastering yourself, your thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's about speaking less but meaning more, observing more than reacting, and grounding your identity in your own values. With time, this presence commands respect naturally, fostering authentic confidence that doesn't rely on constant external validation. Silence is a dangerous and powerful force, one that terrifies precisely because it cannot be controlled or predicted. In a world obsessed with noise, approval, and outward validation, silence stands as a stark reminder of the unknown and the uncontrollable. Yet, it is within this very silence that true strength is forged. Real power does not roar for attention, nor seek the approval of others. It lies in mastery over oneself, in the calm, deliberate command of one's will, thoughts, and actions. To harness silence is to embrace the quiet depths of inner strength that few dare to explore. In this pursuit, we become the quietly powerful, the modern Übermensch, rising above the clamor of superficial distractions to claim sovereignty over our own existence. Nietzsche's wisdom echoes here. The greatest events, they are not our loudest, but our stillest hours. It is in stillness that the will to power grows strongest, unseen but unstoppable. So, I invite you to embrace silence, not as emptiness, but as fertile ground for growth. Let it shape you, strengthen you, and through your quiet power, watch as the world trembles, not from noise, but from the undeniable force of your will.